Before we get started with the kettlebell, the first thing we need to think about is full body tension, the ability to control our core so that it doesn't flex. The way that we're going to train that is by performing two variations of a plank. First one is going to be the hard style plank. So we're going to pop our hands and our forearms onto the ground, step our legs back so our feet are as far away as we can, so we've got a relatively flat back, and then we're going to push up and away as if we're trying to push the floor away. We're going to squeeze our glutes, squeeze the front of our thighs, and finally we're going to squeeze as if somebody's going to punch us in the stomach, and full body tension should be what you have at the moment. You can hold that for roughly 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So you get the sensation of what it feels like to have your whole body switched on at once. The other variation is the high plank. Same situation. We're going to push the ground away. We're going to squeeze our legs and our glutes, and then we're going to pull our core tight. This is the same sensation that you're going to hold if we're doing a press, which is one of the complementary bodyweight movements to the kettlebell movements. That'll be in one of the programs when we come to put them together. First movement that we're going to look at with the kettlebell is the deadlift. This is a hinge movement for our hips and our hamstrings. So to start the movement, we're going to hinge back, keeping that upper body light tension the same way that we just described in the plank. This prevents any flexion or extension of the spine. We're looking to hold that in one place as we push our hips back. Depending on your relative length of your legs, flexibility of your hamstrings, and the length of your arms, you might not quite reach the bell. In that case, you allow your knees to come forward to allow you to grip it. And then what we're going to do is put our shoulders back and straight down, stand straight up, and then return to the floor. And that is one repetition. From the side, hip hinge, making sure from our shoulders to our hips, we didn't get any flexion or extension of the spine. That's locked in one place. Push our hips back. Shoulders should be just in front of the handle of the bell. Allow our knees to come forward to grip it. And then stand straight back up and reverse back down. The second of the movements for a hinge is the Romanian Deadlift, the RDL, which is the same thing we've just done, except starting from the top position. So we're always going to pick the bell up the same way, except this is the start position for the RDL. And the goal here is to perform the hinge until you feel maximum stretch in your hamstrings. So you'll be pushing your hips back a little bit further than you did with the deadlift, and the bell won't quite reach the floor. You return to the start position. Again, keeping that brace in your core. You know you get this right when you feel the stretch at the back of your legs, your hamstrings, as you rep this through the Romanian deadlift. And allow your knees to come forward to pop it back down again. The next movement that we're going to talk about is the Kettlebell Clean, which is one of the ways that you can get the bell up onto your body, which is where it's going to be for the next movements that we're going to talk about. And this requires a little bit of practice to get it right. But if you practice this every time you come to the bell, eventually you'll get it. We're going to start with the bell between our legs. We're going to hinge down, gripping it with one arm this time. And the goal here is to snap our hips up. Now, again, referring back to that plank that we did at the beginning of the video. We're going from this position here with a braced core to quickly switching on the full body as a standing plank with that same sensation you had when you were lying on the floor. So that brings you bolt upright, like so. From the side, hinge back, bolt upright. And the clean takes advantage of that quick movement because the bell is going to have moved from here to here. So that momentum that's created, we're then going to continue that momentum with our arm. If you watch your hand, it's going to come up and then finish in position here. The goal is to keep that bell traveling in a straight line from where it starts, which will be in your hand, to where it finishes. You notice what happened with my elbow there. My elbow comes up and it's slightly behind me to allow my hand with the bell to travel in a straight line. And what that looks like is that. Finish position, the elbow is going to be tucked in against the body, the forearm is going to be sitting on the chest, wrist is going to be straight-ish through the bell is going to be on the back of the arm, you're going to have your thumb to your throat. So once again from the side, turn to the ground, start position, snap the hips up and allow the bell to come through. Don't grip the bell overly tight. If you do that, it'll allow your hand to move around the handle and the bell to move around here. So again, hinge, snap to start position and back down again. Not a technique video, but one of the most common things that happens when you're doing a clean is that the bell will come up and clunk down on your arm like that, which as it gets heavier is less and less pleasant when it happens. That is happening because you've not had the bell in your hand traveling in a straight line. So if you're here and you try to pull the bell up, you'll notice that my hand is now in front of the line where that bell is wanting to travel. If my elbow never comes behind, I'm then creating an arc movement with my hand, and the bell can only clunk down on the top. Instead, it's about the path of that fist that's holding the bell, allowing the elbow to come back. So if you can keep that traveling up and then tucking back in underneath, that will prevent the bell from coming out to have to come back in again to clunk. It's easier to say than it is to do. So it's just about practice. It's about almost like a little tug as if you're starting a lawnmower behind you. So it's going to come up. Now it happens in one fluid movement, but it is the hips initiate and then the hand continues. So it is kind of, 1, 2, but it happens almost at once. So down, up, down, up, down, up. You practice that and eventually you'll get it. The next move we're going to look at is a squat. Now, a kettlebell goblet squat is the most common that you'll get shown here, but because these exercises are designed to be chained together in a flow, we're not going to do the kettlebell goblet squat. What we're going to do is come from that front rack position. So we're going to, again, bring the bell up to our front rack position. Once we're here, we're going to set ourselves. You can clasp your hands over the top like this, or you can have them slightly separate. You've got that bell hugged in tight. You're going to find your squat stance, have that core brace, and then you're going to drive your knees apart and sink down through your hips and back up again. And if you're performing that on one side, whatever amount you do on the right hand side, you would repeat on the left. From the side, that's going to look like this. And that is the squat variation that we're going to use in our flow. Our next exercise is the overhead press. Once again, bring that bell to the front rack position. And now we're going to think about the rest of our body again. We're going to make sure that we're holding that brace as we did in the plank. We're squeezing our glutes and our legs, thighs as well at the front, switching on the quads, the hamstrings, and our calves. So the whole body is one fixed position. And we're also going to squeeze this hand at the side. So the only thing that's not switched on at the moment is this arm. And then we're going to drive up overhead, keeping that full body tension, and then back down to the front rack position. So again, brace, drive overhead, and back down, and that's the overhead press. The next exercise we're going to look at is the lunge. Again, we're going to pull up the bell to the front rack position, starting from here, making sure that's tight and against the chest, and we're going to step back with one foot, control down to the ground, and back up and forward again. Back, down, up, forward. You can swap it around, so you could have both legs going back with the bell on one side, slightly different requirements on stability, or you can always have the leg with the bell, so the right hand side and the bell here and the right hand leg going back, and then swap it round to have the left, or you can do both on one side. Pulling exercises with the kettlebell. The variation that we're going to use in our flow is going to be a bent row. Start with the kettlebell between our legs. Find that hinge as if you were going to do the deadlift from the start of the video, except in this position, we're going to switch everything on and we're going to stay here. And reaching down to the bell, we are going to pull it up to our pocket, swap hands, pull it up to our pocket, swap hands, pull it up to our pocket, and then repeat like this, trying to minimize any bouncing in the torso. Keep all that switched on, glutes and hamstrings switched on, alternating between the sides each time. The next exercise is the kettlebell swing. Now for this, the bell's going to start slightly in front of you. We're going to initiate the movement with hinge again. Now because the bell's further away, depending on the lengths of your arms compared to your legs and your torso, you're going to have a slightly different back angle depending on your anatomy. So for me, I'm going to have my hips slightly further back, and I'm going to have to bend my knees a little bit more in order to reach that bell like this. But you might be closer and you might be a little bit more upright depending on the length of your legs. So our start position is the bell slightly in front of us, shoulder blades pulled back and down, bell tilted, and then to initiate the movement, we'll do it without the bell first. We're going to pull it through between our thighs behind us. We're then going to snap our hips forward, which is going to put us into that standing plank position. That momentum is going to have the bell travel up in front of us. We're keeping our shoulder blades pulled back to control it. That is going to come up here. You will see some people keeping the arms tucked right in. You don't need to, as long as you've got your shoulder blades pulled back and down. The bell is going to stop at the top of the arc around here, and then it's going to come down. And then when it's almost back at our waist, we're going to snap into that hinge again, and then repeat the motion. So from here, back. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what that looks like is like that. The next move we're going to look at is the one-handed kettlebell swing, which is going to start in the same way the last one did, except, as the name suggests, we're only going to grip with one hand. The difference with this here is that when you're gripping with one hand with the overhand to begin with, we're going to think about rotation. We're always rotating our thumbs inward, which is going to point our thumb behind us as we come, so that when that bell, as that gets heavier, it's always pulling your elbow with the direction that it's designed to move in. If you have that thumb pointed outwards, when it goes behind, you're just pushing the elbow the opposite way from where it wants to go. So when you're coming through, you're going to pull it, the thumb is going to point backwards, and then it's going to come up to parallel at the top. So rotate, up, rotate, up. The other hand, what we're going to do with that, what I like to do is start with that over the top of the other hand, although we're not gripping it. And then when we start the movement, we're going to have this hand moving as if it was moving back, except it's going to come out to our side. So that's going to look like that. It keeps the whole body coordinated. So the bell is going to be in this hand, this other hand is going to be behind us. And then as we come up, we're going to bring this hand up to our chest and then back behind us again, up to our chest and then back behind us again. So what that looks like in practice. Like so. Next, we are going to talk about the kettlebell clean from a swing. You think about what was happening at the beginning of the video with the clean. We started between our legs and we snapped our hips up. With a swing, the bell is going to be here. Everything that happens once we're standing is pretty much going to be exactly the same as what you were practicing as if you were doing it from the floor. So it's going to come up, the elbow is going to come back, and you're going to control the arc. The bell is going to have momentum, so it's much more important than it was when you were doing it from the floor to make sure that you've got that elbow controlling the arc. So think about the fist traveling in the path that you want the kettlebell to travel in. So that's going to come back, it's going to come up, and you're going to come through the top like this. Because there's more momentum, it's much easier for that to get away and clunk down when you're doing it, which is why you probably want to practice the swing from the floor to begin with. Different people disagree with me on that, but once you've got the single hand swing, the clean from there looks like the final move that we're going to look at is the kettlebell snatch. Now this has the components of a clean, but instead what we want to do is get from the single-handed swing to the overhead position like so. Now, the momentum created when you snap your hips becomes very important because the bell doesn't just have to come up to here, it's got to come and be pulled up. So we're not trying to pull it back, our elbow is rising up in that straight line. And then as that bell is brought up in front of us, we're going to punch through to the top to get the bell straight up overhead. If you allow the arm to come out at all, you can see it's now in front of that straight line from where we want it to start. That is going to come up and the bell is going to be out here. you're going to have to drag it back, which will swing it up to hit the back of your arm, which you don't want. So from a swing, pull up and push through. And finally, we can also perform the snatch from the floor. Because we don't have the momentum of the swing, the power generated in the hips is even more important here in order to get the momentum in that bell to push up over your head. That's going to look like so. And that is the quick introduction to the main moves that we're going to use when we're putting together our kettlebell sequence. Some of those you're going to find easier than others, but you want to practice each of them so that we can use them as components in the flow, which is what we'll talk about in the next video. It's really important to realize that this was not an exhaustive technique video. This is an introduction to the movements to allow you to practice them. What you want to do is pick a bell weight that making mistakes is not going to injure you. So this, I've been performing it as a 20, so I can perform the moves and not be out of breath. But I would suggest if you're starting from the beginning, depending on how strong you are to begin with, possibly a 16 would be a good place to start. If the bell is a little bit out of control, or 16 if you're male, maybe a 10 or a 12 if you're female. Again, that's not a hard and fast rule, that's just suggested. Females can go straight to a 14 if you're strong enough, not a problem at all. But the point here is, pick a bell that you can use that's heavy enough so you can get the feedback, but not too heavy, so that if it is clunking on you to begin with, that it's going to be painful. The best way to get good at these is just to practice. So you can go into all the techniques and be overthinking it. If you just take the general patterns that you saw in this video and just practice them, really important, making sure that you know how to brace your core, making sure you know how to keep that tight whilst you hinge back, because a lot of the exercises, especially the swings, the deadlift, the cleans, everything is about control of the upper body whilst you hinge and explosively stand up to move the bell where you want it to go. So have a practice. If you're a client, if you've got any questions, drop me a message. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, leave me a message in the comments and I'll get back to you. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video when we talk about how to put these together in a sequence.